Hi, I'm Ron and welcome to PopScicle, where I talk about popular culture, science, and everything in between. Just a few days ago as of this recording, the Society of Filipino Film Reviewers released its second Pinoy Review Awards categories and its winners and nominees. And for the first time, I got to vote. I got to be part of the process because I just joined the society in 2021. It was a fascinating process. I got to feel like an Oscar voter or more like a voter in a critics group award. In fact, the way we released the list of winners was similar to how the US-based critics groups do it. We did it through Twitter. Maybe eventually we'll have a live ceremony. Fingers crossed. But I'd like to talk about my opinions on the best of Pinoy cinema, and then in the process, I'm also going to compare it to the list that the society released. Before going to that, I'd like to present some statistics first. I was able to watch 46 Pinoy movies last year. I wish I had been able to watch more, but that's what I had time for. And out of those, 20 were short films and 4 were documentaries. So the remaining 22 were narrative features. Now, starting with the technical categories, there's one category that I would like to add. This isn't something that the society decided to include. It's best song. And it's understandable why there wouldn't be such a category because there aren't usually a lot of original songs in Pinoy films. And in fact, my top choice for this award was not originally made for the film, which is usually the criterion for such a category. And it's Hanggang sa Huli for Game Boys the Movie. I know it's an SB19 song that was released even before Game Boys the Movie, but I think the way it was played over the key ending sequence, it was perfect. The way it played on the emotions and the way the lyrics really echoed what was going on between the characters. I think it was perfectly used. It was the best used out of all the songs in Pinoy cinema. So I give that category to Hanggang sa Huli, although it wasn't originally made for the movie and there wasn't a corresponding category in the Society of Filipino Film Reviewers Pinoy Review Awards. Now for the categories that were presented by the Pinoy Review Awards, let's start with the other music category, which is Best Film Score. The nominees of the society were Big Night by Teresa Barroso, How to Die Young in Manila by Aliana Cabral, Kids on Fire by Len Calvo, Kun Maupay Man It Panahon by Andrew Florentino, and On the Job 2, The Missing Eight by Malek Lopez, Arvin Nogueras, and Erwin Romulo. And the society chose collectively as the winner Kun Maupay Man It Panahon by Andrew Florentino. Personally, it wasn't one of the more memorable scores, but I don't begrudge it the win. And it's not surprising that it almost swept the technical awards. And that's a spoiler in case you haven't seen the winners of the Pinoy Review Awards. My own choices were the following, and this is in order of preference from first to fifth. My top choice was Dito at Doon. I believe that film by J.P. Habak really used music very well to heighten the emotions of the characters who were struggling to find their identity and to to establish their relationships or to rekindle their relationships with family and friends and loved ones during the COVID-19 lockdowns. And then I also had Alingasngas ng Kuliglig, which is a short film, Game Boys the Movie, Arisaka, and My Amanda in my list. For Best Production Design, the nominees of the SFFR were Big Night by Mark C. Maulen Fadul, Death of Nintendo by Wami Alcazaren and Tessa Tang, Kids on Fire by Alvin Francisco, Kun Maupay Man It Panahon by Wami Alcazaren again, On the Job 2, The Missing Eight by Roma Regala, and Rabbit by Shiel Marie Calde. The winner of the Society's Pinoy Review Awards was Kun Maupay Man It Panahon again by Wami Alcazaren. And I perfectly understand why this was the winner. It's also in my top 5. It wasn't my top choice, but the way the sets were made, the covered courts where the donations were being handed out, the abandoned mansion, the dilapidated and flooded houses, everything was done really, really well and really captured the essence of the tragedy, the how surreal everything was, which was intentionally done by the film. But for me, the best production design was On the Job 2, The Missing Eight. The prisons, the houses, and the other sets, all of those were really, really well done for me. It's Death of Nintendo, I'm really, really glad that it got nominated, and well, I'm sad that it's the only nomination that it got from the society, but at least it got one, and its production design was top notch, really. I also had Dito at Doon because of their use of that staircase. It was really that staircase that made me nominated, because that staircase in the house of the lead character and her mother really emphasized that separation between them during the lockdown, because of the isolation, because of the quarantine. And I think that's what a set should do when it comes to proper production design and art direction. And then I had Kun Maupay Manit Panahon as my fourth, and my fifth was Viernes Santo, which will surprise my fellow society members because a lot of them hate the movie. But I kind of liked it, probably because it was Lovecraftian, and I love me some Lovecraft. But also, I really think the sets were excellently made, were very fitting for the film. It gave its tight spaces, narrow passageways, and of course the religious artifacts, the statues, gave it a very sinister religious horror feel, which is really what it was going for. Out of all the technical aspects of a film, I think cinematography is my favorite. I really love looking at how well shot, well lit a movie is, and what angles the camera is using at any given time, and how it's shifting from one place to another, how kinetic a film is, or how static it is, for that matter, in some cases. So I really paid attention to it, and so did the society. And for the society, the five best jobs for cinematography in Pinoy cinema of 2021 were Arisaka by Miko David, Filipiniana by Senia Patricia, Kun Maupay Manit Panahon by Texian Lim, Last Days at Sea by Mosh Ladanga and Venice Atienza, and On the Job 2, The Missing Eight by Neil Bion. And the ultimate winner was Kun Maupay Manit Panahon by Texian Lim. I understand why. I appreciate it. I think it was really well shot as well. But admittedly, it wasn't in my top 5. For me, the best shot films were the following 5. Again, in order from most preferred to least preferred. And my number 1 was Arisaka. I'm glad that it got nominated because even if the film itself is a bit weak, the cinematography was superb. The shots that it shows to be able to capture the agony of the characters. The camera was the best friend to that movie, really. It was the best thing about the movie, aside from a piece of acting that I would like to highlight later. My number 2 was Last Days at Sea. Very, very beautifully shot. Number 3 was Nerissa, a film that I otherwise did not like, but well shot as well, especially the underwater scenes. City of Flowers, a short film, and Historia Niha by Lav Diaz. Shot in black and white, and I think that's a trend now. A lot of the best shot films are in black and white, whether in the Philippines or elsewhere. And you can see that from the number of nominees in the Best Cinematography category of the Oscars every year that are in black and white. Best film editing, I think, is one of the most misunderstood and unappreciated aspects of a movie. It's probably one of the hardest to explain. Lay people would probably just think of it as cutting and splicing and sequencing, but of course it's so much more than that. And I think it's one of the most difficult and challenging and intelligent, really, and critical, for that matter, aspects of film. The society decided to go for the following nominees: Big Night by Benjamin Tolentino, It's Raining Frogs Outside by Maria Estela Paiso, Kun Maupay Manit Panahon by Benjo Ferrer, On the Job 2, The Missing Eight, Jay Halili, Random People by Caleb Magluno. Now, I think what I just said about film editing being very difficult to capture with one definition shows in how diverse our nominees are and how very different our opinions are as members of the society when it comes to film editing. There's one nominee here which baffles me as to why it was nominated. I won't mention what it is to be diplomatic. I'm glad that it did not win. That's what I'm going to say. What won was Kun Maupay Manit Panahon by Benjo Ferrer, and it was well edited. I'll give it that. And in fact, I had it at number 3 in my list, but my personal choice for best editing was Last Days at Sea. And again, not everyone would agree with that. In fact, it's not one of the nominees, and probably not a lot of people would consider documentary to be as difficult to edit as a narrative feature, but I would argue the same for a short film. Anyway, having said that, my number 2 is On the Job 2, The Missing Eight. That was very difficult to edit, and they did a marvelous job. And number 3, Kun Maupay Manit Panahon. Number 4, Big Night. And number 5, Dito at Doon. I think the ensemble pieces like On the Job and Big Night were pretty difficult to edit. Especially because, well, Big Night was very kinetic. And so was On the Job. So I think those were really some of the best editing work. And in fact, now that I think about it, maybe I should have given those a higher position. But I won't take it back. Last Days at Sea for me was the best edited film of 2021. Now for the categories on form, what I mean are the best live action short film and best documentary feature as well as best first feature. Let's start with best live action short film. The nominees of the society were Kalingas-ngas na mga kuliglig, Black Rainbow, Filipiniana, Kids on Fire, Maski Papano, and Sa Balay ni Papang. The winner of the society was Kids on Fire, which is a fascinating short film. I had some reservations about it, especially because of some delicate scenes, but it was really funny and it was really well made, and oh my gosh, the cinematography was really good. So I'm not angry at all that it won. I really understand. But for me, the best live action short film in Pinoy cinema of 2021 was Sa Balay ni Papang, easily, hands down. It was so well made, but aside from that, it was about Peque Galiaga, one of the greats, true pillars of the Filipino film industry. He directed Oro Plata Mata, which I think is one of the best Filipino films ever made. And it was such a touching tribute to not only his skill as a director, not only how he inspired other directors to make films, but also his kindness as a person. And I think that's something that we should see more often. And hats off to the filmmakers of that. My second choice was Black Rainbow, beautiful. Also City of Flowers at number 3. And then Dandan Soy, which is a very surprising light drama short film with a particular horror element that I found amazing, the way it was handled. And I think everyone should see Dandan Soy. Actually, everyone should see all of these. And number 5, Maski Papano, the simplest one, but one of the most endearing ones, one of the most charming ones. For best documentary, there were several, actually just a few. There were just around 6, I think, that were released in the Philippines. And we ultimately, as a society, decided to honor 3 as nominees. And these were Last Days at Sea, Tao Po, and A Will to Dream. And these are the same 3 films that I cited in my own list. I watched a 4th, but that film was horrible. It was so pretentious, and I will not mention the title anymore. But my top choice was the same as the society's top choice, and I think this is only one of 2 categories where we matched, and that's Last Days at Sea. It's beautiful, not only in terms of the visuals, but also in terms of the story, the plot, what it's about. It's about a child who's about to leave his island home to go to school somewhere else, and he's spending his last days on that island. And the documentarian is covering his last few days. And one of the best sequences there is the last one, which the film ends with. And it's where the documentarian asks the kid, how do you feel that you're about to leave, I think in the next few days or the next day? And the kid, after pausing for a while says, and I'm translating roughly, it feels like a wound, but I don't feel the pain. I know that there's a wound, but I don't feel the pain. And for a kid of that age, I think that the kid was around 10. I might be wrong. But very young. That was a very profound and insightful thing to say. I'd like to think it wasn't scripted. I don't think it was scripted. If it wasn't, it was really such a great, powerful thing to end on. Especially with the scene of the ocean, which is really a big part of the life of that kid, of that child. And it was it's really just such a beautiful film. I wish you could get a chance to watch it. Tao Po is powerful. It's amazing. May Paner is to be saluted for her work, which highlighted the EJK's extrajudicial killings, which have been plaguing the Philippines since 2016. She did a marvelous job of highlighting that in her own way. The society also had the best first feature category to honor those filmmakers who made their first film in 2021. And the nominees of the society for the Pinoy Review Awards 2021 were Kun Maupay Manit Panahon by Carlo Francisco Manatad, Last Days at Sea by Venice Atienza, My Amanda by Alessandra De Rossi, Tao Po by May Paner, and A Will to Dream by Patrick Alceto. All very powerful, deserving nominees, and in fact, they're the same top 5 that I have. What the society went for as a winner was Kun Maupay Manit Panahon by Carlo Manatad, and that's not surprising at all given how well it has been received in the other categories. My first choice was Last Days at Sea, and I don't think I need to explain anymore why I chose that, although I also really liked the other nominees. My second was Kun Maupay Manit Panahon. My third was My Amanda. My fourth was Tao Po. And my fifth was A Will to Dream. The success of a film, of course, rests in large part on how well it is written. And contrary to what a lot of people probably think, among local film goers, a lot of Filipino film is written really, really well. According to the Society, the 5 best written films of 2021 were Big Night, written by June Robles Lana, Historia ni Ha by Lav Diaz, Kids on Fire by Kyle Nieva, Kun Maupay Manit Panahon by Giancarlo Abrahan, Jeremy Dabois, and Carlo Francisco Manatad, and On the Job 2, The Missing 8 by Eric Mati and the great Michiko Yamamoto. I almost expected Kun Maupay to get this because at the time that this was announced, it was basically on a streak. But then On the Job broke that streak, and Eric Mati and Michiko Yamamoto, the real-life married couple, was able to win this category. I understand why it won. It was a really gargantuan effort to write that miniseries. It was presented as a miniseries on HBO, although Venice was able to watch it as one entire movie. So we can really appreciate the effort that was put into it. But for me, my top choice for best screenplay was Historia ni Ha. It's not the longest Love Diaz film. He has made 10-hour films. This clocked in at 3 to 4 hours, somewhere in the middle of that. But at no point will you get bored. As long as you don't normally get bored with anything that's more than 2 hours, it's really engaging. And even the long silences, the long pauses, which Apit Chapong with Resitakul has already overcome with Memoria in his other films. They make sense, and the characters are written so well, especially the lead, the supporting characters revolving around John Lloyd Cruz and Ha, the puppet, and it's such an endearing interconnection among those characters, and the resolutions were ultimately very rewarding, and so that's why I think it's the best screenplay of Filipino cinema in 2021. My other choices were at number 2, Dito at Doon, number 3, Death of Nintendo, number 4, Black Rainbow, and number 5, Sa Balay ni Papa. Now on to the acting categories. These are my favorite. My favorite element of any film is acting. I think a great actor can save a bad film, can make it better. According to the Society, the best film ensembles of 2021 were Big Night, Game Boys the Movie, Historia ni Ha, Kun Maupay Manit Panahon, and On the Job 2, The Missing 8. Not surprisingly, the biggest cast won, and that's On the Job 2, The Missing 8. Now for me, and for many other writers on film, ensemble, the quality of an ensemble doesn't just rest on how big it is. It's really how well the characters come together seamlessly, how they connect to each other, how they carry the film together. And I think On the Job 2, The Missing 8 did that really well. I agree with the choice, and I was incorrect. This is actually the second of 3 categories that where we made the same choice, the Society and myself. So for me, On the Job 2, The Missing 8 was also the best ensemble. My second is Big Night. My third is Game Boys the Movie. Excellent cast. Death of Nintendo was my fourth. That was a brilliant cast of young children, of young actors who did so well, were such naturals, and the supporting actors who were adults were great as well. So I really wish this had been nominated in this category and several other categories. And my number 5 was Historia ni Ha, and I had already mentioned how great the characters and the actors were. Now, for Best Supporting Performance, the nominees of the Society were Angie Castrense, Game Boys the Movie, Dolly De Leon, Historia ni Ha, Lot Lot De Leon, On the Job 2, The Missing 8, J. Valencia Glorioso, Rabid, Mystica, Kids on Fire, and Rance Riffol, Kun Maupay Manit Panahon. The winner was J. Valencia Glorioso for Rabid, and she was very, very effective, terrifyingly so, as she was meant to be, because it was a horror character, which very scary. But I was sad that Angie Castrense didn't win, because for me, she gave the most masterful performance out of all the nominees, and possibly out of virtually all of the performances, the acting performances in Pinoy cinema in 2021. It was nuanced, it was delicate, it wasn't overblown, and it made us think of real Tita Susans that we know in real life, of which there are unfortunately a lot. We felt the anger, or well, I did, and I'm sure a lot of my other friends did. Uh, so I think she was the most effective, and I really wish she had won. She was the runner-up, but anyway, congratulations still to J. Valencia Glorioso, who is a wonderful winner. So like I said, my top choice here was Angie Castrense. And then my second was Shela May Romualdo from Arisaka. And I'd like to highlight this. She was also in Black Rainbow. I think she's an Aita. Wonderful child. Wonderful acting. I really hope we can get to see more of her. And I really wish she had gotten a nomination that she really richly deserved. Especially for being the best element, aside from the cinematography, being the other best element of the film around more experienced actors, including Mon Confiado. My third was Jim Pebanco for Lockdown, an otherwise horrible film, I must say, but he was excellent in it. He really stood out. Lot Lot de Leon for On the Job to the Missing 8, and this will probably surprise a lot of people, including my fellow society members. I voted for Rosana Roses for Paglaki Ko, Gusto Kong Maging Porn Star. The less is said of the director, the better. But I will say that that film was not as bad as other people thought it was. It was funny, but most of the humor came from Rosana Roses, who was the most natural. She was the funniest, and she really brought a lot of the scenes that had her in it to life, and that's why I nominated her. But actually, in my own personal ballot, I had separated the best male and best female supporting performances, as is traditional for most of these awards. So I'd like to just point out my nominations for Best Supporting Actor, and they are, of course, Jim Pebanco. I had Ronnie Lazaro from Jensen Punch at second. At third, I had Kyle Villino from Gay Boys the Movie. He really surprised me with his performance. Dante Rivero was my fourth, and he was from On the Job to the Missing 8. And at number 5, I had Teroy Guzman from Historia Niha. And then for Best Supporting Actress, I had Castrense at first, Shela May Romualdo at second, Lotot de Leon third, Rosana Roses fourth, and my fifth was a nominee of the society, and that's Dolly de Leon from Historia Niha. Now, on to the Best Lead Performance category, which is probably the most exciting for most people, including myself. The nominees of the society were John Arcilla from On the Job to the Missing 8, Christian Bables for Big Night, John Lloyd Cruz for Historia Niha, Kim Molina for Ikaw at Ako at Ang Ending, May Paner for Tao Po, and Charo Santos Concho for Kun Maupay Man It Panahon. The winner was, not surprisingly, John Arcilla on The Job to the Missing 8. Just John Arcilla, only the one who won the Venice Volpi Cup for Best Actor, right? And he was also my top choice for this category. With Arcilla on the top, my second choice was Kokoy De Santos for Game Boys the Movie, and I'm really, really sad that he didn't get nominated by the society. This was actually the one that made me the saddest in terms of the nominees list. He was excellent. He shone even more here in the movie than he did in the series. If the series was Elijah Canlases, this was his. The movie was his. And he showed great range from when he was flirtatious and charming to when he was having a nervous breakdown. He handled all of it with great skill and dexterity. And I really wish he had been given the highlight that he has been deprived of for so long, because when Game Boys the series came out, it was really Elijah Canlas that was being given a lot of attention. And I completely agree that he was excellent in it and he was the MVP. But there were also a lot of episodes where Kokoy De Santos was the MVP, and it was really the two of them, showing, proving that they are the two best actors of their generation, hands down. My number 3 in this category was Sharina Yekla from the short film City of Flowers, devastating performance. Number 4 was May Paner, also devastating. I think that's a word that best captures the performance of May Paner, really emotionally raw. And number 5 was Christian Bables from Big Night, the always reliable Christian Bables. But again, I separated my categories to best male and best female leading performances, and my nominees for best male lead performance were John Arcilla, of course, at number 1, Kokoy De Santos at number 2, Christian Bables at number 3, number 4 was Elijah Canlas for me from Game Boys the Movie, and my number 5 was John Lloyd Cruz for Historia ni Ha. My nominees for best actress were Sharina Yekla for City of Flowers, May Paner for Tao Po, Kim Molina for Ikaw at Ako at Ang Ending, Wenny Princilio, a new actress, for Sol, and Charo Santos Concho for Kun Maupay Man It Panahon. Now we go to the last two categories, which we can argue are the most important, Best Director and Best Film. Starting with Best Director, the nominees of the Society were Venice Atienza for Last Days at Sea, Lab Diaz for Historia ni Ha, June Robles Lana for Big Night, Carlo Francisco Manatat for Kun Maupay Man It Panahon, and Eric Mati for On the Job 2, The Missing 8. For the Society collectively, the Best Director was Eric Mati for On the Job 2, The Missing 8. I totally understand why. That was a very difficult film/miniseries to direct. I really prefer, personally, the first On the Job movie to the second one. I think that was much tighter in terms of the direction and everything else. But again, I was able to watch it as a miniseries, not as a film the way it was seen in Venice. So maybe that's part of the reason why he wasn't even in my top 5. For me, my top choice for Best Director wasn't even nominated by the Society. It's not very sad for me, but I did wish that he had at least gotten nominated. But that's Raya Martin for Death of Nintendo. I think Raya Martin is one of the strongest filmmakers in the Philippines now. He showed that with the criminally underrated smaller and smaller circles and Independencia and his other movies aside from those. And he was just as excellent here. I don't know if it's just the 90s nostalgia which I love, which made me really love this film. But for me, he really handled everything well. And it's no joke to work with kids. Yes, these kids were professionals, and I mean, by professional, they acted like professionals, even if a lot of them were new actors. But it couldn't have been easy. Couldn't have been easy to navigate even some of the especially some of the delicate scenes about youth in that movie. It was a coming of age nostalgic movie, and it was done excellently. So for me, Raya Martin really directed the hell out of it. But a close number 2 for me, and I wouldn't mind interchanging the two actually. Love Diaz for Historia ni Ha, making a 3 to 4 hour film just as entertaining as a shorter film would have been, but packing so much in it, of course, packing so much meaning and depth and gravitas in it. At number 3, I had June Lana for Big Night. At number 4, I had JP Habak for Dito at Doon. And at number 5, I had Venice Atienza for Last Days at Sea. And finally, the biggest category in any film awards, Best Film or Best Picture. And the choices of the Society for the second Pinoy Review Awards were Big Night, Historia ni Ha, Kun Maupay Man It Panahon, Last Days at Sea, and On the Job 2, The Missing 8. And not surprisingly, if you've been keeping track, it has won 5 awards so far. The Best Picture or Best Film winner is Kun Maupay Man It Panahon. Congratulations to the film. It wasn't my personal choice. In fact, it was not in my top 5 for Best Film. I do appreciate the movie. I think that if I would watch it again, I would appreciate it even more. It's just outside my top 10. Actually, it's number 11. But my top 10 are the following. Number 10 is My Amanda, the directorial debut of Alessandra De Rossi. I know it's not as big and as probably as big an achievement as Kun Maupay Man It Panahon, but for me, it's what's such a tender and effective film, and that's why for me, personally, it's one of the top 10 films of 2021. Very personal choice. Number 9, Big Night by June Robles Lana. Number 8, Black Rainbow, excellent short film, very heartfelt. Number 7, Tao Po by May Paner. Number 6, Sa Balay ni Papang which was my favorite live-action short film. And then my top 5 are the following. Number 5, Death of Nintendo by Raya Martin. Number 5, Game Boys the Movie by Ivan Andrew Payawal. Number 3, Dito at Doon by JP Habak. Number 2, Last Days at Sea by Venice Atienza. And my top film of 2021 was Historia ni Ha by Lav Diaz. Now, just looking at all of these films that I cited as my best and that were nominated by the society, I really lament even more the fact that the Film Academy of the Philippines didn't bother to send an entry to the Oscars. Could Historia ni Ha or Last Days at Sea or Death of Nintendo, which I think are the best choices, could they have broken through into the shortlist? Much less the coveted top 5 in the Oscar Best International Feature Film category? Probably not. When not even Asghar Farhadi's A Hero could make it, and where you have Worst Person in the World by Joaquim Trier and of course the presumed frontrunner Drive My Car in the mix. But we would never know, right? The point is, it has been a very, very long time since we did not submit an entry. And in fact, the international film community, the bloggers that I follow, the prognosticators that I follow, were surprised that the Philippines did not send an entry. We could have sent Historia ni Ha. Lav Diaz is a name that's known all over the world. And this is one of his more accessible films at less than 4 hours. Last Days at Sea would have been a good choice in retrospect, because an interesting trend in recent years has been that the countries have been sending documentaries to the Best International Feature Film category, and for the last few years, I think there's always at least one documentary in the final list of 5. Flea being the one that's nominated this year, which also actually got nominations for Best Documentary Feature and Best Animated Feature. So Last Days at Sea may have stood a chance of at least being shortlisted. At least that would have been an interesting nominee. Death of Nintendo might have played with the nostalgia as well, although a lot of the nostalgic references were for the Philippines. But they might have liked the ensemble of young children. Kung Maupay Manit Panahon, which a lot of people have said could have been a good contender, I'm not so sure that the Academy would embrace that type of film. Although, based on some other films that they have nominated in the category, this surreal, bizarre film about tragedy and family, maybe it would have made the shortlist. The point is, we'll never know, because the Film Academy of the Philippines didn't do the only job that they had. Well, that's not the only job that they have, but you know what I mean. They could have, if they can't handle that job, they should just give it to another body. There are bodies that are going to be much better at picking films, because last year their film choice was questionable at best. Given that there were so many good films of 2020, they decided to go for a lackluster one, which of course didn't get even shortlisted. Anyway, this is to celebrate Filipino film. I would really like to appeal to everyone to give Filipino film a chance if you haven't yet. Don't think of Filipino films as inferior just because they're not as flashy as their Western counterparts. There's so much to celebrate in Philippine cinema, so much to enjoy. You just give it a chance and you'll have the best time of your life enjoying a Filipino film, which can be very intelligent and well crafted. So if you like this episode and you would like to see more episodes on Filipino film in general, or popular culture and science fiction and everything in between, don't forget to subscribe to PopScicle so that you may be alerted to new content in the future. Bye!